This is a true story, but I don't expect anyone to believe me because I still have a hard time wrapping my own mind around it. It was the middle of a windy September night, and I had just gotten up to go to the bathroom. When I was finished, I crawled back into my bed and tried to resume where I left off with sleep. About 5 or so minutes later, I found myself startled awake by what I presumed to be a knocking sound. As I wiped drool from my mouth, I listened carefully to see if I was just dreaming or if I really heard someone knocking. I got my answer about 10 seconds later when the vibrations and sounds of someone knocking on my front door alarmed me. I instinctively went into a state of panic as I glanced over at my clock. It was exactly 3 o'clock in the morning. There shouldn't have been anybody in my house at that hour. I got up and ran downstairs. My rushing adrenaline and rising curiosity was only overcome by the pain I felt when I stumped my fucking toe on an end table as I made my way to the front door. I flicked on the light switch as I unlocked the door and proceeded to open it. What I saw was a late teens female covered in blood, totally naked and her face badly deformed from being grotesquely swollen. She'd been severely beaten. Initially, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I wanted to believe that I was having a sick nightmare, but I knew that wasn't the case. I asked if she was okay, but all she could do was point down the street and say, "I got away." I told her to come inside and that I called the police for her. I got my leather coat off the coat rack and placed it over her shoulders to cover her up. She must have been freezing out there because her skin was ice cold. I gently guided her over to the couch and set her down. I looked for my phone to call the police and remembered that I had left it upstairs. I told her I'd be right back and not to worry about a thing. I dashed back up to my bedroom, picked up my phone and called 911. I hurried to tell the operator everything, including my address. Once the operator told me there was a car en route, I ran back downstairs to tell the young woman that the police and an ambulance was on the way. To my utter shock, when I got back downstairs, the only thing I saw on my couch was my leather jacket, placed directly where the young woman had been sitting. I walked around my house looking for her, but she was nowhere to be seen. I started to think that maybe she went back outside, so I headed for the front door to go out and look for her, and that's when I noticed something strange. Before I went upstairs, there was a blood smear on my wall from where she placed her hand to steady herself after I let her in. The stain was no longer there, not even a trace of it. That's when I heard a banging on my front door that made me jump. I peeked out through the peephole and saw 2 uniformed officers standing on the other side. I opened the door and explained to them what I saw. I thought for sure they were going to lock me up for prank calling 911 or possibly even have me committed for being a nutcase. But what happened next totally freaked me out. One of the officers said to me, "Every year on this very night, at this very time, we get a call from whoever the occupant of this house is making the exact same statement as you." All I could say to that was, "What are you saying?" The officer who initially spoke lowered his head, almost as if he had something to say but didn't know how to say it. The other officer spoke up for him and said, 11 years ago there was an elderly couple who lived in this house. One night, this very same night, a young woman came to their door. She had been raped and severely beaten, but somehow managed to get away from her attackers. The couple took her in and called 911, but by the time the paramedics got the girl to the hospital, it was too late. She died on arrival. Ever since then, the residents of this house have made calls to us almost every year on this night, saying there's a battered young woman in need of help, but by the time we get here, there's no one here but some confused owners. So you're saying what I saw tonight was a ghost? I asked the cop. Sir, we're not sure of what you saw. The other cop finally broke his silence. But what we do know is that whatever you saw is what the people who lived here before you saw too. Now that's one hell of a coincidence, don't you think? I said, wait, you said almost every year. So that means there were times people didn't see the girl. The cop who told me the story then said, I wouldn't say that. I'm more likely to believe they either saw the girl and chose not to help her or failed to hear the knocks on the door altogether. Why do you say that? I asked. Because on 3 different occasions we dragged out the lifeless bodies of the owners of this house exactly 7 days subsequent to this night. All appeared to be apparent suicides, even in the cases of the children that were present. My personal opinion, we never found the person responsible for that girl's attack. Before the cops arrived here that night, she indicated to the older couple that he or they lived somewhere around here. I think she's angry because no one's been held accountable for what happened to her, and that's why she keeps coming back, and why she goes after those who don't help her. My mind was sent reeling from the officer's words. The two cops must have seen that they completely shook up my world because they immediately excused themselves. While one headed back to his squad car, the other officer, the one who told me this story, said, "Try to enjoy the rest of your night, sir. If history's any indicator, you're gonna be just fine, and this incident is behind you. At least until next year." Next year? There wouldn't be a next week. I called the landlord the next morning and demanded he let me out of my lease agreement. He tried to play dumb, but I told him I knew all about his little house of fucking horror. I told him I wanted out of my lease and I wanted my security deposit back in full, or he'd be seeing me in court and I had the testimony of two cops to back me up. That was enough to scare him straight because he agreed. I know plenty of people don't buy into the whole ghost thing, but let me tell you, I was there. I saw her up close and personal. I touched her, for God's sake. She was as real as you hearing my voice right now. But if you choose not to believe me, that's your right. I'm just glad I left all that shit behind me. 6 days have gone by since that terrifying night, and now I'm laying comfortably in bed in my new apartment, still slightly shaken by the thought of what could have happened had I not gotten up to pee just minutes before that girl came knocking on my door. Who knows? I could have been pulled from that house in apparent suicide too. Oh well, it's pretty late now, and I have to get up in the morning. I hope you guys enjoyed my personal story. Good night. Who the fuck is that banging on my door this late? It's past midnight. Wait, midnight. It's the 7th day.